tried it last winter, and broke his axle piteously, and was nigh to break his neck. And after that I went all along on the ridge of the rabbit cleve, with the brook running thin in the bottom, and then down to the Lynn stream and leaped it, and so up the hill and the moor beyond. The fog hung close all around me then, when I turned the crest of the highland, and the gorse both before and behind me looked like a man crouching down in ambush. But still there was a good cloud of daylight, being scarce 3 of the clock yet, and when a lead of red deer came across, I could tell them from sheep, even now. I was half inclined to shoot at them, for the children did love venison, but they drooped their heads so, and looked so faithful, that it seemed hard measure to do it. If one of them had bolted away, no doubt I had let go at him. After that I kept on the track, trudging very stoutly for nigh upon 3 miles, and my beard, now beginning to grow at some length, was full of great drops and prickly, whereat I was very proud. I had not so much as a dog with me, and the place was unkind and lonesome, and the rolling clouds very desolate. And now if a wild sheep ran across, he was scared at me as an enemy, and I for my part could not tell the meaning of the marks on him. We called all this part Gibbet Moor, not being in our parish, but though there were gibbets enough upon it, most part of the bodies was gone for the value of the chains, they said, and the teaching of young chirurgeons. But of all this I had little fear, being no more a schoolboy now, but a youth well acquaint with Exmoor, and the wise art of the signposts, whereby a man, who barred the road, now opens it up both ways with his finger bones, so far as rogues allow him. My carbine was loaded and freshly primed, and I knew myself to be even now a match in strength for any 2 men of the size around our neighbourhood, except in the Glen Doone. Girt Jan Ridd, I was called already, and folk grew feared to wrestle with me, though I was tired of hearing about it, and often longed to be smaller, and most of all upon Sundays, when I had to make way up our little church, and the maidens tittered at me. The soft white mist came thicker around me as the evening fell, and the peat ricks here and there, and the furze hucks of the summer time, were all out of shape in the twist of it. By and by I began to doubt where I was, or how come there, not having seen a gibbet lately, and then I heard the draught of the wind up a hollow place with rocks to it, and for the first time fear broke out, like cold sweat, upon me. And yet I knew what a fool I was, to fear nothing but a sound. But when I stopped to listen, there was no sound, more than a beating noise, and that was all inside me. Therefore I went on again, making company of myself, and keeping my gun quite ready. Now when I came to an unknown place, where a stone was set up endwise, with a faint red cross upon it, and a polish from some conflict, I gathered my courage to stop and think, having sped on the way too hotly. Against that stone I set my gun, trying my spirit to leave it so, but keeping with half a hand for it. And then what to do next was the wonder. As for finding Uncle Ben, that was his own business, or at any rate his executor's. First I had to find myself, and plentifully would thank God to find myself at home again, for the sake of all our family. The volumes of the mist came rolling at me, like great logs of wood, pillowed out with sleepiness, and between them there was nothing more than waiting for the next one. Then everything went out of sight, and glad was I of the stone behind me and view of mine own shoes. Then a distant noise went by me, as of many horses galloping, and in my fright I set my gun, and said, God send me something to shoot at. Yet nothing came, and my gun fell back, without my will to lower it. But presently, while I was thinking, what a fool I am, arose as if from below my feet, so that the great stone trembled, that long, lamenting, lonesome sound, as of an evil spirit not knowing what to do with it. For the moment I stood like a root, without either hand or foot to help me, and the hair of my head began to crawl, lifting my hat, as a snail lifts his house, and my heart like a shuttle went to and fro. But finding no harm to come of it, neither visible form approaching, I wiped my forehead, and hoped for the best, and resolved to run every step of the way, till I drew our own latch behind me. Yet here again I was disappointed, For no sooner was I come to the cross ways by the black pool in the hole, but I heard through the patter of my own feet a rough low sound very close in the fog, as of a hobbled sheep a coughing. I listened, and feared, and yet listened again, though I wanted not to hear it. For being in haste of the homeward road, and all my heart having heels to it, loath I was to stop in the dusk for the sake of an aged wether. Yet partly my love of all animals, and partly my fear of the farmer's disgrace, compelled me to go to the succour, and the noise was coming nearer. A dry short wheezing sound it was, barred with coughs and want of breath, but thus I made the meaning of it. Lord, have mercy upon me, O Lord, upon my soul have mercy. And if I cheated Sam Hicks last week, Lord knowest how well he deserved it, and lied in every stocking's mouth. O Lord, where be I a-going? These words, with many jogs between them, came to me through the darkness, and then a long groan, and a choking. I made towards the sound, as nigh as ever I could guess, and presently was met point blank by the head of a mountain pony. Upon its back lay a man bound down, with his feet on the neck and his head to the tail, and his arms falling down like stirrups. The wild little nag was scared of its life by the unaccustomed burden, and had been tossing and rolling hard in desire to get ease of it. Before the little horse could turn, I caught him, jaded as he was, by his wet and grizzled forelock, and he saw that it was vain to struggle, but strove to bite me none the less, until I smote him upon the nose. "Good and worthy sir," I said to the man who was riding so roughly, "fear nothing, no harm shall come to thee." "Help, good friend, whoever thou art," he gasped, but could not look at me, because his neck was jerked so. "God hath sent thee, and not to rob me, because it is done already." "What, Uncle Ben!" I cried, letting go the horse in amazement, that the richest man in Dulverton, Uncle Ben, here in this plight! What, Mr. Reuben Huckaback? "An honest hosier and draper, serge and longcloth warehouseman," he groaned from rib to rib, "at the sign of the Gartered Kitten in the loyal town of Dulverton. For God's sake let me down, good fellow, from this accursed marrowbone, and a groat of good money will I pay thee, safe in my house to Dulverton. But take notice that the horse is mine, no less than the nag they robbed from me." "What, Uncle Ben, dost thou not know me, thy dutiful nephew, John Ridd?" Not to make a long story of it, I cut the thongs that bound him, and set him astride on the little horse; but he was too weak to stay so. Therefore I mounted him on my back, turning the horse into horse steps, and leading the pony by the cords which I fastened around his nose, set out for Plover's Barrows. Uncle Ben went fast asleep on my back, being jaded and shaken beyond his strength, for a man of 65, and as soon he felt assured of safety he would talk no more. And to tell the truth he snored so loudly that I could almost believe that fearful noise in the fog every night came all the way from Dulverton. Now as soon as ever I brought him in, we set him up in the chimney corner, comfortable and handsome, and it was no little delight to me to get him off my back; for, like his fortune, Uncle Ben was of a good round figure. He gave his long coat a shake or two, and he stamped about in the kitchen until he was sure of his whereabouts, and then he fell asleep again until supper should be ready. "He shall marry Ruth," he said by and by to himself, and not to me. "He shall marry Ruth for this, and have my little savings, soon as they be worth the having. Very little as yet, very little indeed, and ever so much gone to day along of them rascal robbers." My mother made a dreadful stir of course about Uncle Ben being in such a plight as this; so I left him to her care and Annie's, and soon they fed him rarely, while I went out to see to the comfort of the captured pony. And in truth he was worth the catching, and served us very well afterwards, though Uncle Ben was inclined to claim him for his business at Dulverton, where they have carts and that like. "But," I said, "you shall have him, sir, and welcome, if you will only ride him home as first I found you riding him." And with that he dropped it. A very strange old man he was, short in his manner, though long of body, glad to do the contrary things to what any one expected of him, and always looking sharp at people, as if he feared to be cheated. This surprised me much at first, because it showed his ignorance of what we farmers are, an upright race.